Hello, welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene.
Oh, my name is Steve.
Hubby. We every year
I
go
thought you
to.
didn't like to use that word.
I didn't say my hubby. I
Oh,
said
okay.
hubby. I don't
Okay.
like using the phrase my husband or whatever. It's too possessive because he's pretty much like a cat. You can't own him. So yeah,
True.
um, every year we go to Lunenburg for Steve's birthday, and we go to two of their three bookstores, Lunenburg Bound and I can never remember the name.
Block Shop Books.
And they have both been in business for at least 8 years or
Yeah,
so.
maybe
Yeah,
10.
yeah. So, um, and every year we both go a little bit crazy. We kind of hold back on. Well, I rarely hold back on buying books, but Steve sort of is one of these people that can just wait. He has self discipline and doesn't need instant gratification, which it's just, I don't get it. So every year we go on his birthday and we go for lunch at one of the local places and we go to both of those bookstores. And so we'll start off with what you purchased this year. What was your.
Right. Well, so this time we went first to Block Shop
Mhm.
Books
Yeah.
when we got into Lunenburg, and we were a bit surprised because it was a super gloomy day
Yes.
and drizzly. And when we usually drive along the coast and cross over the LaHave River at the cable ferry. And when we got to the cable ferry, there was no one there. It wasn't even running on schedule. It was just running on demand. So we thought it's the first time in 25 years that we had a front row spot on the
Yeah,
ferry.
that's true.
So we thought, oh, it's going to be pretty quiet in Lunenburg today because the last couple of years it's been weekends and it's been very hot days. And then we got to Lunenburg and there was people everywhere. And they were all wearing wristbands because it was day one of the Folk Harbor Festival. So maybe if we'd looked at a calendar, we would have known. But looking at a calendar is not one of the things we do on our vacation. So we got there, we put our names in at the Salt Shaker for a table, and then we went over to Block Shop.
Yep.
And I looked around, and I think the first thing I saw was over in the nonfiction kind of craft arts design section. And I'd say Block Shop, which used to be the Dory Shop, but no, it was something else. What was it called before?
Before it was a bookshop?
Before it was Block Shop, it was something else. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a very small shop, but it's very well curated, I would say. And most of the bookstores we like to go to, we don't go to for massive selection. We go to for the eye of the proprietor. And in the nonfiction section, there was a book called The Genius of Japanese Carpentry.
Yeah, so because I don't have power, I can't go back in and put in the info. So I
Right.
try and hold it a little bit extra longer so people
Okay.
can just get the title.
Plus, you can block my face out. So this
Because
is
you didn't shave.
That's right. This is a book written by a fellow named Asby Brown, who, when he, in the 80s, he was an architecture student and had graduated from an undergraduate program and went to Japan and got very fascinated because he'd worked in heavy timber framework construction, was very interested in Japanese carpentry and temple carpentry, and managed to get himself actually offered an apprenticeship by a master carpenter at one of the temple precincts, which he had to turn down because being an apprentice is up to 9 years. But he was allowed unfettered access to the construction site where they were building a big new building in one of the temple complexes, and was able to document in drawings and photographs all the stages of carpentry work and the tools and the mindset and the process. And this was originally published in the 80s and then was reissued in 2013. And the owner of Block Shop had brought it in because she saw it in the catalog and thought, that looks pretty interesting. I'd like to read that myself, and bought a few more copies to sell on. And it's, for those who like this kind of thing, this is the kind of thing they would certainly like. There is a mix of philosophy of carpentry, philosophy of how a carpenter approaches wood, how a carpenter approaches managing other carpenters on site, and also a lot of detail on how the work is conceived, laid out, and actually carried out. piece by piece on site.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm about 80% of the way through. I've got about 20 pages left to go, and it's a kind of book that's more for dipping into and it's nicely structured with some stuff from interviews with a carpenter, some discussions of traditional trees, traditional tools, traditional methods of marking out, and then there's a detailed case study of the fabrication and erection of a picture hall at a major shrine.
Cool.
That's that one.
Yeah.
Do I keep going or?
Well, I think we can go back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think I mentioned that I chose books that I don't ordinarily look at, so I quite have. Yeah, I have a pile of books that I'm.
Here,
kind
I'll
of
hold this up for you.
Okay. Oh. I don't remember the title. A Grandmother Begins the Story. It's a novel. It's by Michelle Porter, who also wrote Scratching River and Approaching Fire. And I'm just going to read you the back because I haven't started it yet. 5 generations of Métis women argue, dance, struggle, love, laugh, and tell the stories that will sing their family and perhaps the land itself into healing. So Carter is a young mother recently separated. Allie's trying to make up for lost years with her firstborn. Lucy wants the granddaughter she's never had to help her join ancestors in the afterlife. Genevieve is determined to conquer her demons. And Mamie, in the afterlife, knows that all their stories began with her. She must find a way to loose herself from the last threads that keep her tethered to the living. So there's quite a number of voices in here, and the one thing I meant to check was to see whether she was Canadian or not. Yeah, well, yes. She's a Canadian author, which was cool. Again, like, why wouldn't I normally? I normally don't pick up stories that are sort of, what would I say, multiple voices within a family. I don't know why. Just because I think that there's not going to be a plot, and I quite like me a plot. So this is probably going to be more along the lines of episodes and anecdotes and that sort of thing. So and the cover was cool too. I mean, look at that bison. Okay, that's on my future reading pile.
Okay. The other book that I picked up from Block Shop is this book by Satoshi Yagasawa called Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. And it seems to have been a little bit of a publishing phenomenon, though I had never heard of it. And it's the story of a young woman named Takako who has just broken off an unhappy affair with a coworker. And she broke it off because he came in and announced that he was getting married the next week. And she thought to herself, if he's getting married next week, it's probably not to me. And it was another coworker that he was getting married to. So she goes into a downward spiral and is eventually invited by her uncle Satoru, who runs a multi-generation used bookshop in Tokyo, to come and live at the shop. And through that, she does some healing, discovers a love of literature, and reintegrates herself in a community of slightly offbeat characters. There's a very subtle, it's a very thin book. It's quite sparingly written, I would say. But there's some beautiful moments of description, but then there's also a lot of really just impressionistic stuff. She spends time with her uncle's partner at a mountain spa, and the descriptions have just enough information for you to create a picture, but they don't actually describe things, which I find kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So this one I'm almost finished. And there's a sequel to this.
So let's just hold it up. So, sorry.
Yeah, right in front of my face.
Sorry. Well, okay. I'll do it in front of my face.
That's okay.
All right. That would be a good one. September's theme for a lot of people on BookTube is shorty September, where you read books that are fairly, short and but are still novels as opposed to novellas. So that would be a good candidate. Okay, I picked up this one completely based on the fact that it is a Penguin classic. It's called Explosion in a Cathedral by Aleo, Aleo
Alejo, Alejo.
Carpentier, and it's Cuban. He is a Cuban author. There we go. And
And this is a classic.
this is a classic. This has been retranslated just lately by Adrian Nathan West. And I was just really interested by the cover and stuff, but then I picked it up and I thought, holy crow. I did not check the text on the inside, so it's going to be a. That's 2 pages and there isn't a single paragraph. Oh my god, there are no paragraphs. That's just a visual thing. Anyways, what we have here is when he arrives in Cuba at the close of the 18th century, Victor Hugues, a merchant sailor from Marseille, brings with him not only the idealism of the French Revolution, but also its ambitions and bloodlust. Landing in the Havana doorstep of a trio of wealthy, eccentric Creole orphans, he sweeps them across the Caribbean Sea to Guadeloupe, whose enslaved Africans he frees, only then to exploit them in his fight against the British for colonial sovereignty. What ensues is Eleo Carpentier's swashbuckling, magical realist masterpiece, an explosive clash between the New World and the Old, and between revolutionary ideals and the corrupting allure of power. So, swashbuckling, I like, and there's ships, and so it looks like adventures, explosions. It should be action packed. We'll see. Okay.
Okay. Another Finnish book I picked up is this book by J.L. Carr, A Month in the Country. This is in the New York Review of Books reissues series, and it's a book that was originally published in the 1960s and reissued through New York Review of Books, written by J.L. Carr. The story is, and J.L. Carr, from the introduction by Michael Holroyd, is an author who had a kind of curious life story. He was a headmaster for a period of time and then retired early to take up novel writing, but there seems to be a slightly kind of snarky or cynical tone to many of his writings, a lot of inside references and stories. A Month in the Country is fairly late, I think 1968, and was shortlisted for the Booker Prize and was a Guardian Fiction Prize winner.
Okay.
It's a very slight book. It's very beautifully written. It's the story of Tom Birkin, a veteran of the First World War who shows up in the town of Oxgodby in Northumbria, I guess, in about early 1920s. And he's there as an art restorer. There's the local Anglican church has a mural underneath its altar wall that has been whitewashed at some time in history, and an eccentric older woman who's just passed away has left a bequest for an artist to remove the whitewash and restore the mural, much to the annoyance of the vicar who wants the money for a new roof.
What is it about churches and their roofs?
But Birkin shows up and sets up a little nest for himself up in the bell tower. So he's sleeping in a little bolt hole with a bell rope going through it. And every day the scaffolding is set up and he's there slowly peeling away the whitewash, revealing first a face and then a hand and others. And the woman who left the money had originally poked away at it a little bit to uncover one or two of the faces to know that there was something there. Yeah. Birkin is pretty sure that this is going to be a spectacular piece once it's peeled out. He had no expectations going in, but as he's unpeeling this, he's getting himself into an imagined relationship with the original artist and imagining what that artist was thinking, what it was like to be that artist at this time, which was probably the 1300s. So there's a very relationship over time piece. He also becomes close with the family of the local station master, who are Methodists who go to chapel, not to the church, and gets to know also an archaeologist named Moon, who's working in the graveyard, also to the bequest of this woman, to uncover the grave of an ancestor who was buried outside the churchyard for reasons that are not entirely clear. They think he might have been a suicide, but they're not sure.
Right.
And Moon is there with ulterior motives because he already knows where the grave is, but he's going to spend all his time there scouting out an Anglo-Saxon chapel that he believes is in the graveyard.
Oh.
But there's a kind of interesting flow of relationships, and it's very beautifully written. The descriptions in this case are actually quite lush, and they're very much betray that kind of painterly mind of Birkin. It's written from the first person, and also at times the fourth wall is broken, and Birkin is directly addressing the reader, and he's clearly writing this much later after the events happened. And it's a book that builds to a pretty intense moment, but very, very slowly. It's a very slow boil.
Oh, cool.
So,
Oh yeah, that's also a
A
shorty.
Month in the Country. And the New York Review books.
Hang on, I'm going to
are-
hold that up a little longer because people will want to know how to spell the author's name.
Right. I would say that the New York Review books are a pretty reliable thing. If there's a rack of them in the bookstore and you can't find something, I would almost guarantee that any thin one is going to be good.
Okay, again, this is one that I picked up entirely based on appearances. It's called The Blackbird of Chernobyl. It's by Anne McMahon. And the premise at the back seemed okay, and I took a quick look. She's the author, Anne McMahon, has won awards for her writing and 13 novels and so on. So I thought, okay, well, it's a little out of my interest zone, but Leila Stoller is dark. Her mood and outlook in life is dark. She father has just retired and left her in charge of the family funeral home, but he knows that his daughter is just going to spend most of the time downstairs, and he hires someone to help keep the business running, to work with the clients and so on. And Sparkle is everything that Leila isn't. And so the new arrangement doesn't go with Leila's perceptions of how things should go. I guess she just thinks everybody should come in dead and she should deal with them as bodies and funeral, ta-da, go on. And whereas so Sparkle is more about the families need some kind of closure and experience that's remarkable to the burial. And so she personalizes these things, which means there's things like cookies being made, or some woman had a particularly good chicken gravy recipe, so there's chicken soup and stew served at the funeral, and this is all getting under Leila's skin. So it's supposed to be one of those hate to love romance things. I picked it up mostly because it looked kind of gothic-y and kind of, upside down romance, and the funeral home was different. Whoops. And so there were just a lot of things that I thought would go well. And this book is just a flatliner. I didn't end up finishing it. There was just no tone. And the main character, Leila, gets all the good lines. And she's very caustic and very, they're good one-lines, right? But they pinch. And Sparkle is, on the other hand, just someone who's very sympathetic and effusive and warm and cuddly. So you can see why the two wouldn't mix, but on the other hand, they're attracted to each other. But there's the outside dilemma that the funeral home is going to be purchased by a conglomerate, and Leila is having struggles because she doesn't want to. The people that have worked for the family's funeral home are in their 70s, and she's like, what are they going to do with their lives? And they're like, we're going to retire. So this tension about being purchased out by this other larger company isn't really a tension at all. It's only in her mind. And Sparkle has been offered a job with them. So, there's not really a dilemma. And they go down to Las Vegas to a conference there for funeral directors. And there's supposed to be some, hijinks there. But it's just not very well. It just does all this. So
they're just jinx, no high?
There's no high. No, there's no high. It's just an okay read. It's the sort of thing that you could pick up and read because it's in a pile of other things, and it's kind of a like especially if you've read something that's really difficult or intense or something like that would be an okay reason. This Leela has got an agenda around natural burials and the YouTube phenomenon. Caitlin Doherty is quoted in here a number of times, and Caitlin is a very interesting person who is someone who has through YouTube videos, and this is a real person. She has what would you say? She has books that talk about the funeral industry and what is that like the where the people get trapped in the costs and so on. It's like an expose.
Right.
But she's also done some interesting books on just what is the practice of death around the world and what are attitudes around death around the world. So it's very much bringing people into connection with the fact that we're all going to die, and which is why I have a personal a personal something or other where I don't use the word past. I say died. They're died. They're died. They're dead. And this is part of my way of just saying it. We are all going to not be here one day. So recommend? I think not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is another one from Lunenburg Bound. That's where I got the month in the country. This is called The Curve of Time by Muriel Wiley Blanchette. And it's a book that I saw there when I think 5 or 6 years ago anyways. There was a bunch of them on the shelf. And one of the things I like about Lunenburg Bound is they have a very good nautical section, both of new, hard-to-find nautical books. Michael brings in books from publishers in the UK and various parts of the world. And also, because Lunenburg Bound is both a used and a new bookstore, there's a very good section of used nautical books and then also a very good section of rare nautical books. I think this is the first year I didn't buy anything out of the rare or used nautical book section. And oddly, in the new nautical books, the book I bought is a book about a motorboat, which I'm usually way too stuck up to read about motorboats and adventures. But a couple things. Because the motorboats are just stink pots, and it's not really any skill. On the other hand,
because he's sailing,
because I'm sailing.
both the sailboats are wooden.
Yes.
And you made one of them.
Yes.
And so as the descriptors go past as to why he wouldn't be interested in a stink pot boat, it just becomes more and more rarefied.
Right. Yeah. On the other hand, in the last while, I've seen some videos about a boat called Argonaut 2 on YouTube, and this is a boat built in the 19-teens or earlier that has been maintained in service pretty continuously. It used to be a mission boat, and it's cruising up the Inside Passage of BC. This is a boat in Muriel Wiley Blanchette's book. It's a story of a young widow and her 5 kids who, when she's widowed, she buys a 25-foot gas-powered boat, and this is in the 1927, I think it begins. And basically every summer they cruise up the Inside Passage of British Columbia, up Desolation Sound, up through various areas seeing. And this is at a time when there were still indigenous settlements in many parts of that area, as well as the emerging industrial settlements of logging camps and log booms and sawmills on the water, canneries on the water, still also folks basically doing settlement along the coast. And over a number of summers, the family travels these waters, and her descriptions are of kind of the ordinary things that happen every day. What makes it interesting after all this time is, I think, the author's sensitivity to and appreciation for indigenous places and customs. So it's definitely not got a colonial mindset. She and the family are very respectful when they approach the winter villages that are not occupied at the moment because of people being off hunting or fishing in the summer. And it's also interesting because of the characters that they encounter along the way. And also, I guess, the reason I was mentioning Argonaut 2 is that watching those videos, I realized that actually it might take some skill to run an old wood a powerboat that's made of wood, and the navigating through the Inside Passage is going to be an adventure all the time with the whirlpools and rapids and multiple currents. It's this is a 50th anniversary edition that's got some additional material with it, but it really does stand up as a kind of portrait of a particular time in a particular place, and the kind of freeness of the family's life on the water as they're traveling.
So did you hold it up?
It's the Curve of Time, Muriel Wiley
Hang on,
Blanchett,
your fingers on.
and it's published by Raincoast, I think.
Whitecap.
Whitecap Press. It's a reissue of a book that was originally published by an important publisher called
Gray's Publishing. Yeah.
which operated in BC for a long period in the sort of 60s and 70s.
Just in case the author's name was too small, M, like initial M, and then Wiley is Wylie, and then Blanchett is Blancheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one last thing about that book that I think is interesting, I'm just thinking about it now, is that there's no backstory. There's no discussion of what it was like before or what it was going to be like later.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a book set in the present all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The most you'll get is them thinking about the weather the next day or thinking about the weather the day before.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but it doesn't read like a diary or a journal. It reads like just very present episodes of life.
Yeah. I guess we started it as a read aloud, but I'm squeamish, and so they, in the second chapter,
They did a lot of fishing.
they did, but they were bringing up this thing from deep down, and I was thinking, oh God, it's gonna be something awful. It's gonna be, anyways, it wasn't awful, but I just couldn't handle the suspense, so we're not doing it as a read aloud. Okay, I am currently reading The Twilight Garden by Sarah Nisha Adams. Okay, there we go. And this is set in London in the, I guess, 1975-ish, but also in current day. And we have a house side by each, and they share the backyard, which is quite unusual to have a shared backyard. So each, I guess, you kind of have to come in from the sidewalk in order to get to the far side. So there's a right of way, and there's no clear delineation as to who can be on what side. It's just 100% shared. And so we have the 1970s, where a family from India have come in, and they are truly outsiders, and the woman who's in the adjacent house has been doing the gardening for years and is very upset about there's going to be some intruders. So we sort of see that navigation, and we see the Indian family. There's a new child born, and just the way the community is brought into this garden. And so they create it as a community garden. And then later in the 2000s, I don't know exactly when, I'm not sure when Buddy is Winston 2018. So yeah, you do the math. Winston and his partner Lewis are living there now as renters, and Winston is having a bit of a rough go. He's not really depressed, but his partner Lewis is off in London all the time doing work, and so he's at house himself. He works just up the street at a convenience store because he used to be a banker and he just burned out. So he has to come to terms with his neighbor, who has just completely renovated the adjacent house, and they have to share this garden again. Now she owns the her part of the share, but he is the renter, so what's his rights, what aren't his rights. So they've got all these clashing things going on. And I guess I'm about halfway through. It's a little bit of a one-line story. I can't, aside from these interpersonal clashes in the 2018, the earlier family didn't seem to have too much trouble going on. it just they what's that word, reconciled fairly quickly and evenly. So are Winston and Bernice are they going to be quick in their reconciliation, or is it going to be a bit of an uphill slog? And what about Lewis, who doesn't really want to be there? So I don't think it's an okay book. Excuse me. One of the reasons I picked it up was I thought it might be fun for my mom, so I'm just reading it before I mail it out to her. I think this story will be pretty much for something that my mom will like. And so, yeah, this wasn't really purchased for me in particular. It was more with an eye to what she might enjoy.
Cool. Okay. I have to put my other glasses on so I can see. This last book I bought is called Your Absence is Darkness, a book originally in the Icelandic, translated to English. It's by Jon Kalman Stefansson, and you won't be able to read any of that. So then,
does it say the name of the
translator is Philip Routen.
Okay.
And Stefansson is a fairly well-known author in Iceland, has won a number of prizes. Nordic Council Prize for Literature, Icelandic Prize for Literature. He's written a trilogy, Heaven and Hell, Sorrow of Angels, and The Heart of Man, which also all won prizes of various kinds, including translation prizes, which were won by Philip Routen, the translator. This is a book I saw on the shelf in Block Shop, and I looked at it, and I thought, I have a kind of weakness for the darkness of Icelandic fiction. And we've spent a teeny little bit of time in Iceland and really felt a lot of a strange sense of affinity. There are aspects of the landscape that feel very much like Nova Scotia, and also aspects of the reticence of the people that seem similar. And in general, Icelandic fiction, a bit like especially Finnish, but also some Scandinavian fiction, has a different sense of time, and it's a bit it's a bit more like episodes rather than timelines, and the episodes then kind of, you have to kind of build the links between episodes yourself. I picked it up in Lunenburg Bound because it was, instead of being just stuck on a shelf with fiction, I thought that might be okay, but I don't think so. In the other store in Lunenburg Bound, it was on a shelf face out, and it had a sticker on it of one of the staff's kind of impression of the book, which was just, they found it really, really striking, moving, beautifully evoked landscape. It's a story of a man who comes to an awareness in a cold church in the countryside, who doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know why he's there, he doesn't know how he arrived, and there's a stranger staring at him from 5 rows back, who starts asking him questions, and the man flees.
As you would.
Yeah. So I have not started this one yet. This is, I think, not a book for reading on an island in the woods in the summer.
You might get scared.
No, I think it's more. It's. I think all the monsters are inside the head in this one.
Oh, so it's like you need a fire for.
I think it's a kind of
fire and a coffee or a brandy.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like
anyway.
Any excuse for a brandy or a whiskey is good for me. So that's it.
So that's my haul. One that's basically will be laid aside for winter, and 4 that I'm just about finished in the 2 weeks.
Yeah. Quite often, Steve and I choose books that the other is going to be interested in. So I'm interested in the bookstore one and the Months in the Country one. Mm-hmm. Although I have a feeling I've read it, but anyways. And I don't think you're interested in any of mine, are you?
Yeah, I think the explosion in the cathedral
right.
will be of interest.
Yeah. Okay,
maybe
this one?
The
Bison one, Grandmother.
Begins the story.
Okay, yeah. Okay, this is the last one. It's a Canadian one. Elliot Gish is the author. Grey Dog is the book. And this one is also definitely not in my usual pickup. It's pretty, what shall we say, spooky. It's supposed to be spooky.
Yeah, you were hoping for a real gothic.
Yeah.
Scarefest.
Yeah, I kind of was. I don't know why, but I was, because I usually don't like being scared, especially here, because there's like 100 million hours before you're going to get saved by the police. All right. The year is 1901, and Ada Bird, spinster schoolmarm and amateur naturalist, accepts a teaching post in isolated Lowry Bridge, grateful for the chance to reestablish herself where no one knows her secrets. She develops friendships with her neighbors, explores the woods with her students, and begins to see a future. Her past, riddled with grief and shame, has never seemed so far away. But then, Ada begins to see strange and grisly phenomena, and something that she calls the gray dog, which is sort of, as you can see, sort of half one animal, half of another. So this is a tale that does get progressively eerier as you go. There's certain people in the story who Ada is sort of advised to not go near because they've got reputations that are contrary to what the community feels as, positive influence. But she's drawn to one or two people who are, just she's lonely, and she's got a lot of grief and a lot of anger, and these two women are sympathetic to that. And it's probably the first time in her life where she's found anyone who's remotely sympathetic to the situation that she found herself in before she came to Lowry Bridge. And her dad, her father, has definitely got a looming, oppressive, controlling thumb on his finger, even though she's managed to move not a fair ways away, but a fair enough away that she should be able to start feeling some freedom and some autonomy. But no, he still manages to really be present in her life. And what we're seeing happen is both unnatural phenomena around the woods, and is there witchcraft? Is there some kind of supernatural thing that's going on? And then we're also seeing Ada's mental decline, in the face of not being able to talk to anybody about this, and also just the presence of her father continues to just squeeze the life right out of her. So as her mental decline becomes more manifest outwardly, then the phenomena around her become more manifest as well. And the ending, as it says on the back, I think this is what someone said, that the ending is going to stick with you. Where does it? A seething, gorgeous horror debut. The ending will haunt readers long after the final page is turned. So that was the that was the seller for me. Elliot Gish is actually a Halifax gal, and she works in the library system in Halifax. I'm not sure which one she's at, but so that was also fun. I liked this. I think it's definitely got a creepy element to it. There were a couple of spots where it was a little bit slow paced. I think maybe a little bit of editorial tightening, but on the other hand, it's not really meant to be a fast burn. It's meant to be a slow burn. But there was something about the way the supernatural crept in that I thought was just a little bit tenuous in the beginning. So it takes her quite a while to figure out whether such and such an event was really real or not real. And so she's struggling with that, but that little struggle takes a bit too long, I think. Anyhow, it has quite an ending, and I really recommend this one. I think it's quite good, and be curious to see what else Elliot Gish comes up with. I do believe this is her first book. Also, it's signed. So, cool. So that's it for us.
Yep.
I believe that's quite a chat. We'll be doing it again next year, I'm sure. We've talked about how maybe if we go a little bit earlier in the day, we might not have to get reservations, but also check the calendar and see whether there's a festival going on. But we like to go on the day of Steve's birthday, so it might not matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's it for me, unless you have any parting words.
Nope. Well, books are good.
Books are good. So I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you next week with something who knows what. Bye-bye for now.